The realities of climate change are with us, as you can see in those two slides. Slide A actually is a picture of what used to be part of Lake Nakuru, but which has receded and now becomes a foraging ground for animals. Now, picture B is actually a phenomenon that happened last year following heavy droughts. Now, these are carcasses of dead animals that could not withstand the loss of vegetation and water and succumbed, basically. So they've not been culled or anything like that, but they just succumbed. Now, if you should consider that these are primarily the sources of livelihood for pastoralists, then you start getting the picture about the economic and human impact of this kind of events. Just some more evidence of the impact of climate change. The receding nature of rainfall. If you look at the deep green around there, that's the area that has a surplus fruit, in Kenya. The rest of this are areas of deficit. But as you can see, the rainfall ice height has been moving inwards, which means that the region that provides surplus food in Kenya is actually shrinking. So I think there is reasonable evidence as to the growing impact of climate change. Now, our research objective was basically to review the risk management strategies that are employed by communities to prepare, avoid, or moderate, and even recover from the effects of exposure to anthropogenic climate change. Then obviously we wanted to draw on policy implications. Now, we approached this using case studies and documentary analysis of a whole range of communities and practices, looking at range management in Kibwezi, fodder for livestock systems and conservation-based agroforestry systems in Embu, high-value tree crop systems in the coastal humid zones, soil fertility-based agroforestry systems in Maseno. All these are, places in Kenya that, I will not necessarily go into details pointing out where they are, but they are spread across the country, found in different agro-potential zones, and obviously also, the people of the communities, come from different, social and cultural extractions. Species preference among the Oma and Boni communities of Buketoni, use of indigenous techniques in the management of pests and diseases, and so on and so forth. So you can see that there is quite a bit of literature in terms of documenting the practices of traditional, local, and indigenous technology applications. Now, some of the findings that are coming out of this work is that to help cope with the negative impacts of negative climate change, communities employ traditional, local, indigenous knowledge-based practices. Now, this is something that came through clearly from a number of presentations, including the keynote address by Professor Sakona. Now, some of the practices or these traditional local indigenous knowledges include gender-defined knowledge of indigenous plant and animal species, especially drought-tolerant and pest-resistant varieties, water harvesting technologies, water conservation techniques to improve water retention in fragile soils. Most of the things that we've had, throughout the last 2 days, mixed and/or intercropping and diversification, soil conservation, use of early warning system like we had this morning from one of the sessions, transhumance to avoid drought, hard accumulation, use of supplementary feedstocks, and so on and so forth, as you can see on the board. Now, one of the key findings, and which supports other observations, is that traditional local indigenous knowledge is the resource that is most readily available to communities on the ground. And that this knowledge has evolved over the years, okay, with the domestication of plants and animals, and is critical for responding to climate change-related risks at the local level. Now, this might sound, rather obvious, but it raises a number of key questions that have major policy implications. Now, the first area of policy implication is, on the whole, debate around adaptation. This morning, Dr. Fatima was quite pregnant about, defining adaptation and so on. Since Wednesday, we've heard about whether adaptation is development, the notion of development first, and so on and so forth. Obviously, in the context of the Bali framework, adaptation is one of the key areas in the international debate on climate change, and therefore it's critical that we have a very clear position on what adaptation is, and what positions we take as a continent. I think also at the national level, there's it's important that countries as well as communities at the local level determine what are the activities that account for adaptation. Now, of course, related to that is the whole issue of adaptation financing. As we're well aware, in the international debate, there's a need to separate finances for development and financing for adaptation. We also know that over time, the level of ODA has been going down. Therefore, it's extremely important that we do not mix in the same pot these issues. And I think from some of the presentation that we've had in the last 2 days, it's not very clear, from the initiatives that we're undertaking, how we distinguish, what is adaptation from what is, normal development. Well, at least from a financing point of view, I think this is extremely critical. Then, of course, there's the issue of technology transfer and technology development, including issues of intellectual property rights. The perspective that I would like to bring to this debate is that whilst some might declare the end of history, we want to declare this the beginning of history for Africa, because as I've already noted, communities have been adapting, over the years, but they have been adapting to the normal cycles of climate change. What we are dealing with here is anthropogenic, climate change, and therefore we cannot run away from the whole debate about historical responsibility. And this is why we need to be very clear when we're discussing these issues. Now, as far as the communities are concerned, they have technologies that are working. We can debate whether they meet the thresholds of dealing with the major events of climate change. But what is key is that that is the technology that they have. And I think going forward, if this global trust of fusing scientific knowledge with local knowledge is to be sustainable, what we are saying here is that that local technology has to form the basis. And therefore, what we would like to see is a proper and a more coherent approach to building that knowledge. Because for us, it's very clear that local and traditional knowledge has been, it's by definition, sustainable. It in many ways supersedes scientific knowledge. It is what scientific knowledge is based on. So it's actually intellectual dishonesty for scientists to come and talk to farmers about sustainable development and so on and so forth, when these farmers are the ones who actually introduce sustainability, in terms of their practices. So what this whole portends is that there are all new areas of policy implication that this this implies. For example, we need to rethink about our science, technology, and innovation policy. We need to think about transportation, energy, and housing policy within the context, as I want to emphasize, of traditional, local, and indigenous technology. Obviously, each taking the lead, and modern science following. We need to rethink our agricultural or rural policies, land policies, water policy, forest policy. Basically, what we are saying here essentially is that we really need to rethink development. What is development? And I think what my parting shot is that modern science, or at least the philosophy that drove modern science, has actually led to the problems that we face in terms of climate change. And we need to acknowledge that traditional, local, and indigenous knowledge has always been built around the issue of sustainability, balance with nature, and so on and so forth. So I'd just like to leave you with those few thoughts. Thank you.